In this video, I'm going to define impression formation and discuss ways that impression formation varies by age. Impression formation is the way we form and revise first impressions about others. There are a few concepts that influence the process of impression formation, and I'm just going to briefly introduce two of them to you: self-fulfilling prophecy and the primacy effect. As the name suggests, a self-fulfilling prophecy starts with your prophecy or prediction about a future event. What we have found in psychology is your predictions about the future impact your expectations for the future event, which in turn impacts and influences your behavior. Since you act as if your prediction is true, your behavior increases the likelihood that what you predicted will come to pass. When your prophecy becomes true, your beliefs are reinforced and the cycle repeats itself. This process happens a lot more frequently than we expect. For example, when you wake up in the morning and think it's going to be a horrible day, your attitude and interactions with others might actually make that come true. Primacy effect, on the other hand, is a tendency that information that we learn first is weighted more heavily than the information that follows. Primacy effect is one of the reasons why a good first impression is so important. People make judgments about you from the very first time they interact with you, whether that is what you say or even the outfit that you're wearing. Those first impressions often shape the way that people think about and interact with you in the future. What I want to talk about next is age differences in the way that impressions are formed and maintained. The three factors I'll cover that impact age differences in impression formation are negativity bias, motivation, and knowledge. Negativity bias is allowing initial negative information about a person or an organization to stand even when we later learn positive information about that person or organization. Some researchers have suggested that older adults may be more prone to a negativity bias when they're compared to younger adults. A study by Hess and Pullen in 1994 found that when participants were presented with positive information about a target first and negative information about the target second, or vice versa, perhaps they were presented with negative information first and positive information second, all the participants, young and old, were able to change the impression they had formed about the target in the study. However, if older adults were presented with negative information first, followed by positive information second, they changed their impression faster, meaning it is easier to change a positive impression to a negative impression than it is to change a negative impression to a positive impression with older participants. Moving on to motivation. Some researchers did a study on the effect of aging on the quality of social judgments. They thought that older adults would engage in less complex mental processing than younger adults would due to normal age-related declines in working memory. To assess this, the researchers provided some complex and some relatively simple information in a few crime scenarios to see which information older adults attended to in order to make social judgments. Surprisingly, researchers found that there were minimal differences between older adults and younger adults in how they processed the making of their judgments. However, they found that older adults were less likely to engage with complex information when they had little interest in the task. As you can see in the graph on the right, older adults' performance was significantly different depending on how engaged they were in completing the task. When they did not find the task interesting, they did not analyze the crime scenarios as deeply and rated criminal behavior as less guilty compared to younger adults and older adults who did find the task interesting. Thus, this study shows how motivation can impact an older adult's decision-making process. Some studies found that older adults may rely on their accumulated knowledge in forming accurate impressions. A study was conducted to measure the ability to make inferences about other people based on the behavior they presented. The participants were told to form an impression of an individual based on written descriptions. For example, Amy's behavior was described, as you can see on the slide, using the following statements. Amy reported all of her taxable income to the IRS. Amy stole her best friend's sweater. Amy told the cashier that she had been undercharged for an item. As you may have noticed, the description included hidden cues to help participants understand Amy's character. Even though Amy seems like an ethical person, her behavior of stealing her best friend's sweater showed some dishonesty. The researchers suggested that older adults that were participating in the study were more sensitive in detecting these subtleties in behavior and were better able to form more accurate impressions. In this video, we learned about the process of impression formation and how it may differ in older adults. The 2016 United States presidential election demonstrates how changing what someone thinks about you, whether that impression is positive or negative, is a difficult task when you have been in the public eye for decades. Both candidates, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, were generally well known to voters in the United States, and people had already formed either a positive or a negative impression of their character and behavior. Changing those impressions is an uphill task for well-known candidates. This may be one reason or additional factor that helped former President Obama do well when he campaigned against Hillary Clinton for the Democratic presidential nomination in 2008. Due to Clinton's extended time in the public eye as First Lady, people already had formed either a positive or negative impression of her. However, since President Obama was not as well known at that time, he was better able to manipulate how people felt about him. Politics demonstrate how challenging it is to manipulate or change initial impressions, but also how it can be used as a powerful tool. Thank you so much for sticking with me to learn more about impression formation. Here are some helpful resources if you would like to learn more.